Hello and welcome to this episode of Spotlight North Carolina Cooperative Extension. I'm your host, Rebecca Benton. North Carolina Cooperative Extension is comprised of two land-grant universities, NC State University and NCA&T State University. We are located in all 100 counties, including the koala boundaries. Now today I have with me returning guest, Aaron Blackmon. Aaron, thank you for coming on the show today.
Yeah, no problem.
Now tell me a little bit about what you do for Cooperative Extension.
So I'm the livestock and forage crops agent for Columbus County. So I help people if they have horses, cattle, sheep, goats, poultry, anything that has fur or feathers, and it's an agriculture livestock or in the livestock industry. That's kind of my wheelhouse.
Okay. Now today, I think what we want to talk about or highlight is about the livestock 4-H group that you've been working with. I've been helping you a little bit, but that you're kind of the lead on that.
Right.
So can you tell us a little bit about like the primary goals of having a 4-H livestock group in our county?
Yeah. So I guess we'll just start with what we call 4-H youth livestock. So it's really a way for kids that have a passion for animal production, whether that be, cattle, sheep, goats, hogs, poultry. It's a way for them to get more hands-on experience and a little bit more an educational component. And it also involves a little bit of leadership skills. So it's enabled for them to do that outside of school and outside of showing. So 4-H youth livestock, what we're doing really has nothing to do with showing. It's more about conception, livestock skills, and we have 3 competitions really on the state level. It's Skillathon, Quiz Bowl, and then livestock judging. Quiz Bowl is kind of like Jeopardy style, where they're on teams and they get to compete with other teams. And Skillathon is a little bit more independent, but we pulled their scores together as a team score. But it's knowledge skills. They get production scenarios, and it has all kinds of categories: feed ID, tool ID, production scenarios, meat ID, wool quality, a kind of a full spectrum of all livestock production.
Absolutely. Now, what inspired you to decide that we should do a 4-H livestock group in our county?
Well, we've had some people come up to us saying that they were interested in getting their kids involved in livestock, and it's a common thing for youth to be interested in animals, especially. Well, it doesn't matter what kind of community, but especially a rural community where we're very prominent in livestock production, especially swine and turkey. And we have a fair amount of beef cattle in the county. So the kids are seeing this stuff as they're driving by. Their neighbors may have livestock, and it's a way for kids to be involved in the industry and learn more about it without actually owning the animals. So they can come and they can learn about cattle, they can learn about swine, and they don't actually have to have one in their backyard. They can learn about conformation, how to judge it, how to look for the right animal, and it's kind of a low input on actually having an animal, but getting the same knowledge out of it.
Excellent. Now tell me a little about, now you and I had the opportunity to go last week, or maybe by the time the show comes out, it might be a few weeks, but we got a chance to take in the livestock clinic, take a couple kids there and see what's going on. So can you explain to our audience, like day one, some of the things that they got introduced to?
Yeah, so the livestock clinic is a 2-day event in Raleigh, and it's a way for youth that are just getting into judging or Skillathon to kind of see what it's like. The first day we focused on Skillathon more so. So we went to Raleigh, and of course in on the university, NC State University, we have educational units, and we have educational units for beef cattle, swine, dairy cattle, equine, small ruminants. And so the first day we went to the swine unit, and they got to see what a farrowing house looks like and see what the modern production commercial swine farrow sow farm operation looks like. So they got to look at sow cards, and they got to answer questions, and what a what a kind of typical day a farm manager would have to do. So they got to learn some of those skills, and also they got to see the visual aspect, and it was able for them to kind of tie it all together to see what it actually looks like on a hog farm. I also spent some time on grilling and kind of meat ID. We have a kind of a meat specialist on campus, and he had a demo carcass and showed out the cutouts of the meat and why certain cuts are more favorable than others, and how we kind of cook those cuts to appeal to our palate. So then we kind of followed out the day with some beef quality assurance. So we have a beef quality assurance program in the state, and it kind of helps connect producers with consumers, and kind of goes over some of the general practices we do in the beef industry, along with some kind of consumer stuff to kind of help consumers understand what we do in the industry and why we do what we do. And then we follow it up with some kind of Jeopardy style, kind of conceptual questions of all industries. So that was first day, and the second day was judging, which is another component of the state contest. And what we look for in judging, we kind of, so if you've ever been to a livestock show, and the guy or the lady in the ring that is kind of the official of the show, that's what our kids are essentially learning how to do. They're learning how to judge animals. So they're on the other side of the show and kind of agenda. And so they're looking at animals, which animals is the best in the group. And we were showing kids, what to look for, how to look for conformation, look for production qualities, and then also how to state those things. So oral reasons is another part of the contest. It shows kids how to state their reasons clearly and defend them, in front of somebody. It also helps them with public speaking skills.
Yeah. They had some great opportunities. I have to say, when we were in there, I was watching and I was listening as they were teaching them how to judge. And it didn't matter. Every time I would pick, like, number one for me would be the last, and the last one would be first. And I'm like, I've completely got this wrong. And one of the kids there, and I was like, because he was getting them right every time. And I said, what are you doing? He's like, well, you're looking for the strongest one, Miss Rebecca. I'm like, okay. He's like, but that doesn't necessarily mean the biggest.
Yeah.
So it's like he's like in production. So I was like, well, that helps me out a little bit.
Yeah.
But he was very helpful for me. But that would not be my forte. I also really enjoyed. We got a chance to the swine producer that was there. She gave us some insightful. With my background being in nutrition to begin with, it was interesting to know. I want to say that she said pork production was number one. I would have always thought it was chicken instead, but she said pork production was number one in the world.
Yeah.
So I thought, wow, that's interesting.
Pork is the number one consumed meat in the world. Is in a lot of different countries. Not, we have to think outside of the U.S. In a lot of different countries, that is their protein of choice. It's really easy to raise a hog, because hog is kind of, you can raise them off so-called byproducts. Growing up, people fed hogs, in the South or way before we were a little bit removed from farming. Most people had a hog in the yard. It was very easy to keep up. You just fed them the scraps, or if you plant a little bit of corn, you feed them a little bit of corn. But mostly he kind of lived off of the off of the scraps of everything else, and and then you can put that hog up in the winter and smoke it or salt it or whatever, and it was an easy protein to keep. So it's still pretty dominant in other countries. Of course, chicken has kind of taken the rise in the U.S., but there's still a big market for hogs.
Well, like I said, I was shocked, and I mean it does make sense though, because they are so easy. Like you said, in other countries they may do some backyard production as well.
Yeah.
Now, my other favorite thing that we did was the tagging. So tell us, what's that importance of the youth learning about the tagging of the ears?
Yeah, so tagging. If you've ever seen cattle, you see their kind of their earrings with numbers or letters or names or whatever, and that's just a form of an ID. So farmers that have more than 4 or 5 cattle, it's kind of hard for them to name them all. So a lot of times they're assigned a number or a number in a letter or a combination of the sort to keep records on that animal. So every time an animal is given a vaccine or antibiotics or has a calf or is bred, we have to keep diligent records of that, because it's kind of hard if you got 50, 100, or 200 head of cattle or any kind of livestock. You have to kind of keep track of that. So we were showing them the most efficient and practical way to tag livestock, and also with foreign diseases that we're experiencing. We have to be able to identify those livestock, especially when we're transporting. So there's a lot of state and national mandates for having IDs for animals whenever they're leaving a farm or crossing a state line. So for them to know how to tag an animal for identification purposes is very important.
Well, like I said, they had a good time, and they actually got to take a little memorabilia home with them, which was really fun. So, Aaron, if we have any youth that are interested in this, what are the stipulations for them to get into the youth livestock in Columbus County?
Yeah, so the age is 8 to 18, so that's 4-H age, which you can explain that. You have to be 8 by January 1 of that year that you want to compete, and you have to be less than 19 by January 1, younger than 19 by January 1 to compete in that year. And so that's the age range, and that's really the only qualification. The state competition, I talked about that. This year is at the end of July, 1st of August. So if we have youth that is interested in joining, you're still welcome to join. You may not be ready to compete by then, but we can definitely get you prepared to compete next year. So, we definitely have room, and we welcome anybody that wants to come and learn and be a part of the group.
And do you know around about when we're meeting over the next few weeks? Because I know it is summertime. So what is our summer schedule looking like?
Yeah, so it's best just to call the office. We normally meet on Tuesdays and Thursdays, but there's a couple of times we're meeting on off days. But that's kind of the general schedule for the summer is Tuesdays.
It's like 10 to 3.
Yeah.
Bring some lunch money with you.
Yeah, 10 to 3. Yeah, bring some lunch or lunch money.
Okay.
We try to go out to some farms or farm to kind of look at livestock to kind of tie everything together.
Because we're going to foster that learning and foster that hands-on approach too.
Yeah.
So they kind of get a whole well-rounded view of the livestock.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like I said, it's rewarding. It's it takes a little bit if you're kind of new to it, but if you stick with it, there's a lot of opportunities. There's even scholarship opportunities for people that want to judge on the collegiate level. So it's definitely something that if you're good at it and you really practice at it, it can take you places.
That's awesome. Aaron, thank you so much for being on this episode. If anybody's interested in getting up with you, can you give us a phone number?
Yeah, you can call us at the office, 910-640-6605, or you can email me at aaron_blackmon@ncsu.edu.
Audience, thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Spotlight North Carolina Cooperative Extension. As always, we appreciate any of your support. If you are on our YouTube page, please go and subscribe. We'll see you in the next video.